welcome everyone. My name's Ariel Saltzman. I'm a faculty member at Queen's University, and as chair of the Irving and Regina Rosen Lectures Subcommittee, I'd like to welcome you to a live concert, an Odyssey, a Jewish Odyssey through the lens of Yiddish music, performed live in Sweden, Stockholm, with Mitchell Smolkin and Jerry Abdo. This event, the first since the pandemic, is coordinated physically and virtually from Queen's University in Cataraqui, or Kingston, Ontario. The university is situated on the territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe. As settlers from other continents, we remember this history, which involves conquest, genocide, and dispossession, and express our gratitude for the privilege of working, living, and learning here among First Nation and Métis communities. This program, which is sponsored by the Rosen Lecture Series and Artist in Residence program, has since its founding, when it was endowed and supported over the years by Regina, who passed away in 2018, and Irving Rosen, has a mandate, and that is to enable the wider community in Kingston and beyond to better know and understand the living and vital tradition of Judaism and its relationship to other religious traditions and societies at large. Over the years, thanks to their generosity, we've been able to host distinguished scholars and eminent and world-renowned artists. Most recently, Diego Rotman, who came to us from Bezalel, Shona Dolansky, the biblical scholar, the cultural critic and philosopher Ella Shohat, Ruth Bihar, the anthropologist, and many people, including our own Howard Edelman and Daniel Wolf. Howard spoke with Mohammed Abu Samra. Next year, when we return to campus, our artist in residence will be the visual artist Shimon Ati, who will join us in the fall. And given our mandate to hold lectures in person, we hesitated in going virtual, but in the end, being sidelined by the pandemic as everyone else. And in order to maintain our momentum, the subcommittee decided to hold a virtual event this year. And we were delighted that the musician, and I hope Mitchell doesn't object to this, musicologist and historian, Mitchell Smolkin, was able to join us and accepted our invitation. My colleague and co-committee member, Dustin Atlas of Religious Studies and Director of Jewish Studies, will proceed with a more fulsome introduction to our guest. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm the just named Dustin Atlas, Director of the Jewish Studies program at Queen's. Today, we're lucky that we get to join singer and cultural interlocutor Mitchell Smolkin as he takes us on a journey through Yiddish music's history, looking at its origins, its linguistic heritage, and its impact. We are also lucky, as you can see, that it's taking place from the Great Synagogue of Stockholm, which is clearly a beautiful building, and we have several guests. Mitchell has a lot of accomplishments, but the ones that matter for us today are he was involved on an intimate level with Yiddish music's interface in the Canadian cultural landscape. He was the artistic director of the Ashkenaz Festival, which is one of the largest multidisciplinary Yiddish festivals in the world. And now he's based in Europe, and he has, been kind enough to join us from there. And part of his role there is as a curator and performer, and he's had the opportunity to witness Yiddish music's impact on 4 different continents. So for this performance lecture, Mitchell will be joined by the very talented Jerry Abdo on accordion. And if there's any questions about sources, songs, or whatnot, like detailed questions, if anyone sends an email to me, I can forward it to Mitchell, and we can help answer any tough questions later. But yeah, that's enough from me, and on to the main event.
Of all the boys I've known, and I've known some, until I first met you, I was lonesome. But when you came in sight, dear, my heart grew great. This old world seemed new to me. well. I must admit you deserve expressions that really fit you. And so I've racked my brain trying to explain all the things that you mean to me. Composed in 1932, this song, written by Jacob Jacobs and Sholem Sekunda, became a worldwide hit within 5 years when recorded under the Germanized title Bei mir bist du schön by the Andrews Sisters in November 1937. Thank you, cousin. Cousin Yuval. Within 30 days of its release, 250,000 records had been sold, as well as 200,000 copies of sheet music. Bei mir bist du schön, bei mir hast du heim, bei mir bist du eine auf der Welt. Bei mir bist du geht, bei mir hast du it, bei mir bist du Teile von Geld. Für schöne Mädel haben gewollt, nehmen mir und von sie alle hab ich ausgeklebt nach dir. Bei mir bist du schön, bei mir hast du heim, bei mir bist du Teile von Geld. Unfamiliar with the Yiddish language, it was reported in Life magazine that music stores were dealing with many confused customers, that they were trying to purchase what they misidentified as either buy me a beer, Mr. Shane, or my mere bits of shame. Neil W. Levin, a scholar of Jewish music, has contended that Bei mir Mr. Shane is the world's best known and longing reigning Yiddish theater song of all time. Bei mir bist du schön, please let me explain. Bei mir bist du schön means that you're grand. Bei mir bist du schön, again I'll explain. Bei mir it means you're the fairest in the land. And I'll say, Bella, Bella, even say wunderbar. Each language only helps me tell you how great you really are. I've tried to explain. Bei mir ist es schön, so kiss me. Say you'll understand. So kiss me and say you'll understand. Over time, the song grossed approximately $3 million, and for the next 3 decades was covered by many artists, used as the basis for theatrical productions, and even mistakenly became a pro-Nazi anthem in Germany in 1938, which was Goebbels approved, until its origins were discovered and it was banned, save for an anti-Semitic version which was played by a German propaganda swinging ensemble. Now, to understand how a song written by Sholem Sekunda, born Shloime Abramovich Sekunda, and Jacob Jacobs, born Yakov Yakubovich, became a global sensation from a fledgling vaudeville show in New York City in a language that now only a few speak, either in a religious or a culturally specific context, we need to go back almost a millennium, and we have to strip things down to the rafters. Melody. Jewish melodies. Kol nidrei ve'asarei ve'charamei ve'konamei ve'chinuyei וכינוסהו שלו. Music that cuts into us and transcends time and space. It fills a void. It can translate the agony and longing of a mother's heart or the joy of a soul being set free. Adonai Eloheinu Be'amcha Yisrael tefilatam Be'ava tekabel Tehi leratzon Tamid avodat Yisrael Israel Amecha. Yearnings for peace that reach beyond our physical world, laments to our ancestors. It can evoke the awe of God and it can wrestle us from our slumber. Shema Koleinu Adonai Eloheinu Usverachem Aleinu Aleinu Bekabel Berachamim Berachamim Uvratzon Et tefilateinu. For Jews, as for so many cultures over millennia, the voice was a way to translate the human experience, a way of connecting generations, l'dor v'dor. It was resistance, humor, solace. For observant Jews, it was and still is the first and last thing you do when you lie down and when you rise up. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. It contains and it connects. It was the rabbis who began composing sacred songs, almost instinctively in a folk manner from the 10th to the 14th centuries, and some of them gained popularity. They would come to mark every popular occasion in the life of the Jew in the Middle Ages. From this tradition, the Zmirot emerged, which were home songs that enhanced the Sabbath meal, serving as a bridge between the human and the divine, as the family sat for hours around the table. Let's sing this together, you in your homes or wherever you are, and us here. So repeat after me. Yai da 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 da, yai da 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 da, yai da 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 da, yai da 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 da, yai da da da, yai da da da, yai da 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 da. Die, 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 die. Those two together, you ready? Die, 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 die. In the Jewish Enlightenment, they abandoned the idea that you had to spend a whole lifetime studying in order to reach spiritual aspiration, that through music and through language and through this repetition that we could create a kind of spiritual connection. So this became something that was done in the homes and still is done around the Shabbos tish, around the Shabbos table. And despite the boundaries that were imposed by the church and the ruling elite throughout the 14th and 15th centuries in Germany, German oral literature and music reached the Jewish population, and they were exposed to a whole secular world. This is the period of the sung or intoned epic poetry in Judeo-German, Yiddish. This marked the conflation of Hebrew literature, lore, and song with German rhyme and phraseology and idiom, which was borrowed from contemporary German song and literature. Performances were given at German homes of the upper classes, the patrons of secular art, and they featured these novel adaptations of Jewish religious texts and German and Italian chivalric songs. The Ashkenazi Jews, Eastern European Jews in particular, created a rich body of melody. And in all areas that they settled, their minstrels mingled with other music makers, borrowing and adapting elements from each other. By the 16th century, the Jewish minstrel had disappeared. Only the light performances of clowns and acrobats, dancers, and the badchim, who would sing at wedding ceremonies. The badchim carried on the old traditions and some of the practices of the former Jewish minstrel. These badchonim, quite literally one who concocts and creates and make known, they were folk educators as well as entertainers, and so they sang these Yiddish songs that were imbued with meaning. The song, Skrip, klezmer skripet, it imagines such a badchin at the frenzied wedding scene and was written for Sholem Sekunda's musical, A Freiliche Mishpoche, a happy family. Here, a badchin singer sings, fiddle, klezmer, scrape away, play a freilach for the wedding, the faces of all the relatives are shining. Let's go to the chuppah. Soll sein still. Slip, klezmer, skrippe, spiel a freilich zu der Chippe. Leichter jede von ihm Mechatonim, so Jeche lange gehen. Klapp! Heucher auf die Tatzen, Fiddler sollen Strunes platzen. Freilich senden alle, guck noch auf die Kalle, sie ist Molechen. Hai, ai, 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 starke besser macht das Rädel größer. Ai, ai, nimmt rein die Kalle in der Korne, kickt und die Mommeleie, sie sagt jede in der Dehe. Und die Mumme maschellos nichts waschen, kasche stupp, ja, ein Mazel tov! The 16th century minstrel harkened back to a highly creative period, and as a result, many new categories of secular song emerged, including cradle and love songs, ballads and dance songs, drinking and humorous songs, work and children's songs, satirical songs, as well as the more traditional wedding, religious, holiday, ethical, and historical songs, and many others. The renowned Yiddish song collector, Ruth Rubin, recalls that the Yiddish folk saying, zu singen und zu sagen, to sing and to say, derives from a time when the Jewish Spielmänner, the Jewish minstrels of the Middle Ages, would recite their bardic tales set to a chant. In the Yiddish vernacular, it has come to mean a person who has a lot to complain about. She transcribed just a song from her mother's singing called Hat sich mir die Zip zerzipt. And it goes, my sieve is worn out and altogether broken. My shoes are torn, so I'm dancing in my stocking feet. Dance, dance facing me, and I'll dance facing you. You'll take the son-in-law, and I'll take the daughter-in-law. Hat sich mir die Zip zerzippen, hat sich mir zerbrochen, hat sich mir die Schick zerrissen, tanzen die mir auf. Tanz gegen mir, und ich gegen dir, die ist in die Edem, und ich nimm die Stimme. Zerbrochen ist der Lokschenkopf, verbrennt der Nacht. Tanzen die Machenike, ist die Kohle in der Mitte. Oh, ich hasse mich satt, und alles sei die ganze Besproche. Tanz auf der Chassene, im Masel in die Woche. Folk songs would mirror everyday life, taking up some of the simplest themes, such as potatoes, in this humorous little ditty, which plays on the fact that all week one eats potatoes, but on Saturday, one gets to eat a kugel, a potato pudding. Montag Bubes, Dienstag und Mittwoch Bubes, Donnerstag und Freitag Bubes, Shabbos in den Norden der Bullbeck Kugel, Sonntag weiter Bubes. In the 19th century, the modern Yiddish lullaby abounded in number and variety. Scholars have attempted to trace the cradle song prior to this period throughout the Middle Ages, but there's a scarcity of records from the Bible and the Talmud, even though religious authorities frowned upon singing non-Jewish lullabies. Within the Pale of Settlement, the majority of Jews lived in the direst conditions. Religious life dominated, and little boys were sent to Hebrew school at the tender age of 4 or 5, while little girls were most often kept at home to help with household duties. What we often hear in lullabies is the aspiration of the mother for their child. In the case of boys, to become perhaps successful as a religious scholar and or merchant. One also hears about the laments and the conditions of the mother's life. Reuben wrote that the injection into lullabies of themes that related to the adult world were natural. For although the adult beside the cradle hummed and crooned soothingly, the singer was aware that the infant could not be touched by the texts themselves. Consequently, many an adult unburdened his heavy heart, pouring into the lullabies sad thoughts and troublesome problems. Schluff, 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 sleep, sleep, sleep. Daddy will go to the village. He'll bring an apple to make your little head strong. Schluff, schluff, schluff. Der Tate wird fallen in doof, wird bringen ein Äppele, wird sein gesund aus Käppele. The song Yankele, by the renowned poet Mordechai Gebirte, has the mother ushering the child into their life as a scholar. And we can also hear the relationship one would have to basic emotions, such as crying in the early 20th century. Go to sleep, my Yankele, my baby. Hush your crying, close your little eyes. A big boy who has his teeth already, should mama need to sing him a lullaby? A big boy who has his teeth already and will go off to school by and by, studying the Torah and Gemara. When his mama rocks him, should he cry? Schlaf schön, mein Yankele, mein Schöner. Jägle, die schwarzen Kerl macht zu. A Jüngele, was hat schon alle Zähne, muss noch die Mama singen, Halleluja. A Jüngele, was hat doch alle Zähne, wird die Mama so bald Cheder gehen. Und lernen wird Chumischen gemorgen, so weinen wenn die Mama Victim. Probably the most well-known of all Yiddish lullabies, Rosenkes mit Mandeln, Raisins and Almonds, was written by the father of modern Jewish theater, Abraham Goldfaden, in 1880 for his operetta Shulamis. Personally, the song helped my son go to sleep many a night, as I channeled the softness and care of my late Bubi Sonia Gelgor, and magically it seems to work every time. While a baby boy is being rocked to sleep, the little goat that stood under his cradle would go to market and return with raisins and almonds. And when you become rich, Yiddish, remind yourself of this lullaby, raisins and almonds. This will be your calling. You'll be a merchant of all wares. But for now, sleep, Yidele, sleep. Dem Beis Hamikdash in a winkel Freude sitzt die Amone Basion allein. Bin Yachidu Pixie gesehen und singt ihm zum Schlafen Alide schön. Jews, according to the Polish politician and nobleman Antoni Ostrowski, were always sober. And this virtue should be conceded. Drunks are rare among Jews, end quote. This seemed to be the consensus among Polish elites in the 19th century. Only Jews were immune from the epidemic of drunkenness that had contributed to depleting the Polish nation's strength. Catholic clergy held up the Jews as a model of temperance for their parishioners. The Jewish relationship to alcohol was framed differently, as in the historical pamphlet I received when I arrived in Lithuania some 20 years ago to study at the University of Vilnius, where Jews were blamed for alcoholism, claiming they had seduced the non-Jewish population into their inns and plied them with booze. The truth, of course, is neither of these fantastical binary fabrications, but surely more complex. Songs about drinking in Yiddish did, though, abound and conveyed a broad landscape of Jewish life, from those that celebrated the festive meal and the centrality of the glass of wine, to those that chronicled Dionysian levels of drunkenness. In the earlier period, starting in the Middle Ages, licentious behavior was not represented in songs about drinking, but rather the more codified consumption of wine as part of Jewish ceremonies was featured. The humorous and satirical songs about drunk life came later. For instance, in this piece entitled Dos Bissele Mashke, a little bit of booze, the original of which I'm going to try and play from the recording, which was transferred off of a wax cylinder in 1905. The singer and writer Solomon Shmulewitz was one of the last great badchins of his era. And in the song, he laments, this is 1905, he says, "In you, little glass of wine, lies my entire happiness. When I want to be merry, I look at you, I desire you, you are my solace. You delight my feeble breast, you keep my soul alive. To hell with you, money, to hell with the whole world. I laugh at it as long as I have a little glass of wine. You're delicious, sweet as sugar. I'm as faithful as a child to you. Even though you knocked me off my feet, everything is worth it because of you. For you, nothing is too expensive. You're so dear to me. For you, I'd go into a fire, even into the dark grave. I'm ready to die right now for you. I'd even go into the tomb if I knew that after my death, you'd give me a little wine. How good it would be to be dead drunk." 1905. I'm going to try and play this and see if I can do my, okay, share screen. So, hope you can hear this at home. If you can't, I apologize. But this is what it would have sounded like in 1905.
Das Bissele Maske, gesungen von Dichter Schmulewitsch, Standard Records. Rein. In dir, du Gläsele Wein, liegt doch mein ganzer Glück. Wenn ich will noch lustig sein, gib ich auf dir ein Blick. Zu dir, hab ich Lust, so bist meine Komme, so durchquitzt mein schwacher Brust, so derhalst mir meine Schame, auf Kapore, Saphir, das Geld, ich in der ganzen ganzer Welt. Wenn ich hab noch ein Gläschen Wein.
Hope you could hear that at home. The drinking song called Yash, or Whiskey, was written by lyricist Joseph Curler from a gulag in the former Soviet Union. He was an advocate for teaching Yiddish in schools in Birobidzhan, which is notably one of the only places in the world to this day to still have Yiddish as an official language. By note, of course, Sweden has Yiddish as an official minority language, which is also very rare. He was sentenced to 10 years of hard labor for anti-Soviet nationalistic activities, and he wrote this song while in the labor camp. When I drink a little whiskey, everything splashes and shines. I throw away the empty flask and I do a dance. Oh, sugar sweet, hold me by the hand, feet braiding bagels, my soul's on fire. Fickelt out ranst, fickelt out ranst. Gib auf die Putz der Flasche, oi, oi. Und ich gehe tanz, und ich gehe tanz. Oi, oi, oi. Tickes ist, snap me by the hand. Flechten Bilder, die Füße in die Schumme brennt. Oi, oi. Tickes ist, snap me by the hand. Flechten Bilder, die Füße in die Schumme brennt. L'chaim, to life, an expression which has transcended linguistic and cultural boundaries, stems from the 5th century Hebrew word chai, which means life. The performer of this song, Aglezla L'chaim, Let's Drink to Life, Misha Alexandrovich, born in 1914 in the shtetl of Bershpils in Latvia, was so popular that Stalin and Khrushchev would call him for private concerts. It sets the more traditional and nostalgic landscape of the festive meal, recalling loved ones who are no longer here and celebrating a belly full of wine.
Wenn man sitzt bei jonteftigen Tisch, Verfeindschaft und Verfeind, man soll ständig noch munter sein und frisch. War alt und jung, wo sitzen do, vor jedem Besonder, wo Seinheit mit uns nicht so, hat Leselelchaim, der Becher füllt Wein, vor der Sohn, sie soll ständig mit uns sein.
The rabbi was not immune from scenes of fantastical drunkenness. In this 1927 song by Moshe Nadir, set loosely to the music of Old King Cole, the 18th century rabbi Rebbe Elimelech, one of the great founding rabbis of the Hasidic movement, becomes so inebriated he takes off all of his religious garb and calls for the klezmer musicians to play.
Und es der Rebbe Elimelech ist geworden, Gott der Freilich ist geworden, sehr freilich, Elimelech hat der Eis getan die Brillen und dann getan die Trillen und geschickt doch die Fiddlers die Zwei. Und die dicke Fiddlers haben dicke Fiddle, haben dicke Fiddles, haben sie. Und die dicke Fiddles haben dicke Fiddle, haben dicke Fiddles, haben sie. Und es der Rebbe Elimelech ist geboren, noch mehr freilich ist geboren, noch mehr freilich Elimelech. Hat der gemacht, Abdallah, mit dem Schabbos, never Tower und geschickt nach die Peidler, die Zwei. Und die Peidler, dicke Peidler, so die Peidler, dicke Peidler, dicke Peidler, und die Peidler, dicke Peidler, so die Peidler, dicke Peidler, so die Peidler, dicke Peidler, so die See. Und die Peidler, dicke Peidler, so die Peidler, so die See.
Right. And finally, a song about a man who was on his way to market to buy a horse. And he stops by an inn, I guess run by Jews, only to become so inebriated that he no longer cares about the horse or the market. Based on a Roma tune, he proclaims, I didn't buy a horse, and all my money is gone. I leap up from my troubles and I sing a song. This final note is a subtle trope throughout Yiddish music which conveys the power of music to cut through our worries and transcend our everyday concerns.
Noch gefällt zum Jahre, mit teiste klinget mehr, und a little sing it mir.
Sing with me.
Yai die 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 yai die yada die 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 yai die die yada die 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 yai die die yai die die yai die die yai die yai die die yai die die. Smelde hab ich nicht gekauft. Und das Geld schon lang versäuft. Und von so spring ich mir. Und a little sing ich mir. Ja da 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 ja da 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 da. Ja da 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 ja da da. Ja da da ja da ja da da da. Ja da 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 da.
Between 1881 and 1924, over 2.5 million East European Jews were propelled from their native lands by persecution and lack of economic opportunity. And for me, one of the most moving functions that Yiddish song plays is the conveyance of profound pathos and longing. Far from the immediacy of today's technologies, we find in these stories the existential dilemma of quite possibly never seeing the face of your child again, and maybe not even hearing their voice. In the song A Brievele der Mamen, a letter to the mother, writer Solomon Shmulewitz in 1907 captured the pain of millions of immigrants who realized that letters would be the only form of communication with loved ones left behind. The ballad was instantaneously a hit. He writes from the perspective of the mother, "My child, my comfort, you are going away. Remember to be a good son. With anxious tears and fear, I beg you, your loyal dear mother, you are traveling, my child, my only child, across distant seas. Just arrive in good health, and don't forget your mother. Please send a letter every week, and thus lighten your mother's heart, my child."
Mein Kind, mein Trist, du Forster weg, sie sei a Sohn, a Guter, der Bett mit Tränen und Schreck, dein treue, liebe Mutter. Du Forst, mein Kind, mein einzig Kind, a Liebe weiter jammen. Ach, komm mal hin, noch frisch gesund, und nicht vergesst dein Namen. Ihr vorgesund und komm mit Glück, seh jede Woche a Brief schick. Dein Manns Herz, mein Kinderglied, a Brief Mammen, sollst du sie versammeln. Schreib geschwind, liebes Kind, schenke dir Nechomet, die Mama wird dein Brief lesen, und sie wird gelesen. Erst geschmerzt, bitter Herz, der kriegst dir die schon.
If it were even possible to capture further the intensity of the mother-child bond and the longing for the biological and primal mammalian comfort that underscores our very existence. This next song just does that. I've performed it hundreds of times around the world, and although like most great hits, it became a caricature of itself and perhaps an anachronism to a more quaint existence, the power that it has to let me into a stranger's heart is unparalleled. I have looked into the tear-filled eyes of many countless strangers as I sung its melody. Written by Jack Yellen in 1925, the same composer of Happy Days Are Here Again, the theme song of Franklin Roosevelt's successful 1932 presidential bid, A Yiddish Mama premiered on the vaudeville stage and became a top 5 US hit in 1928. That year, it sold over 1 million copies for Columbia Records. In 1930, the song inspired a film, Meine Yiddische Mama, the first Yiddish musical on film, and one of the first times Yiddish was used in a talking picture. A Jewish mother. There is no better in the world. A Jewish mother, oh, how bitter when she is gone. How bright it is when she is here, and how sad and dark when she has passed to the other world, to Olam Habo. Through water and fire, she runs for her child. Oh, how happy and rich is the mensch who has this beautiful gift from God. Ich will bei euch a Kasche fragen, sag mir, wer's kennt. Mit welcher Teile vermengt, wenn's Gott allen. Man kauft es nicht für kein Geld, das gibt mir nur umsonst. Und doch es men verliert men, die Verträgen men vergisst. Es weht, vergeht men kein nicht, es hilft nicht kein Gwen. Was hat verloren, doch nicht scheuen, was ich mein. Es gibt nicht besser in der Welt. A jüdische Mame, wenn die bitter, wenn sie fällt. Wie schön und richtig ist in uns, wenn die Mame ist du. Wie treurig finster, wenn Gott nennt sie, bei voller Mabor. Wasser und Feuer, wird sie gelaufen für ihr Kind. Nicht halten ihr Teil, das ist gewiss die beste Sinn. Bei wie glücklich und reich ist der Mensch, was hat. Als a schöne Matone geschenkt von Gott, als ein altig jüdische Mame, The cataclysmic unfolding of the Second World War continues to pervade the human imagination and spirit. Current political tensions at European borders are echoes of the destruction and devastation that we continue to try to avoid. The songs that were written during the Holocaust are exquisite windows into the souls of many who would never emerge. Es brennt It Is Burning is one of the most popular songs in the Yiddish language. It was written by the poet and songwriter Mordechai Gebirtig in 1938, the same writer of the lullaby, Yankele, from earlier, who spent almost his entire life in Krakow in the Jewish quarter Kazimierz and was killed by Germans in Krakow's ghetto on the 4th of June, 1942. His best-known song was a prophetic vision of the nightmare to come, and it became the unofficial hymn of the ghetto uprisings and the Jewish partisans. It is burning, brothers. It is burning. Our poor town is burning, and you are standing and watching with folded arms while our town burns. Es brennt, Brüder, es brennt. Bei unser arm Städtel nebet brennt. Weise Witten irrgossen, brennen und zerblossen. Und steht und guckt, als soll sich mit verlegte Hand. Steht und guckt, als soll sich wie unser Städtel brennt. Steht und guckt, als soll sich wie unser Städtel brennt. The ghetto in Vilnius had a theater, a stage which I had the honor to sing on, and in early 1942, a Yiddish song entitled Yischolik by Leib Rosenthal and Misha Wexler, both of whom perished in the Holocaust, chronicled the life of an orphan boy named Yischolik, who peddled cigarettes and greeted his harsh fate in the ghetto with an optimistic whistle and song. Note the leitmotif, which I referenced earlier, about the power of melody to transcend hardship and isolation. The boy Yischolik sings, "My name is Yischolik, I'm a kid from the ghetto. My name's Yischolik, I'm a reckless little guy. Though I'm left with nothing, a whistle and a song remains my reply. The Kreifche Papyrossen, the Kreifche Sacharin, geworden ist ein Säure billig Welt. A Leben verdroschen, a Brote, a Verdienst, von Ghetto-Händler hab ich doch gehört. Chris, ist Holly, ich bin das Kind von Ghetto. Ich ist Holly, a heftige, dicke Jung, Gott verblieben, Gole netto, de lange Hals noch, as Gott verblieben, Gole netto, de lange Hals noch, as My own grandfather, Boris, lost his mother, father, brother, and sister to the Nazis when they were shot in 1941 in Molodechno, now in Belarus. Boris emerged from the war with only 2 uncles. I personally have felt the power of Yiddish to give image and language to a void that many have inherited by the overwhelming trauma of unimaginable horror. As many of you know, in my other life, in my other hat, I worked as a psychotherapist, and it is so true, the capacity for human beings to completely sever ourselves from overwhelming pain and not remember it or not think about it. And in a time when we're also preoccupied with being great or happy or having whatever we want, actually the capacity for us to put these things away is actually very good. And my grandfather could never, ever, ever put language to the people that he lost. And that's an incredible thing, to make it well into your 80s and have a career and find some way to compartmentalize this pain. But when I found out about it, this launched a bit of my career studying Yiddish and looking into Yiddish music. The great Yiddish poet Avram Sutzkever, who died relatively recently in 2010 at the age of 96, gave me words when my grandfather could speak none. The next song has been a personal anthem. as it has been for many. Sutzkever recounted that he survived the war by etching his poetry once on the inside of a coffin lid with a nail. This song was also written in the Vilna Ghetto for the theater with music by Abraham Brudno, who eventually was murdered in a concentration camp in Estonia in 1943. Under the starry heaven, offer me your pale white hand. All my words are flowing teardrops. I would place them in your hand. Gone the luster from their brightness, seen through morbid cellar view. I no longer have my own space to reflect them back to you. Necha, wo nicht kein Winkel, sie zu schenken dir zurück. Unter deine weiße Stirn streckt mir deine weiße Hand. Meine Werte seinen Tränen will ruhen in dein Hand. Sehe es dunkel, sehe Finkel in mein Keller dicken Lied. Und ich hab nicht kein Winkel, sie zu schenken dir zurück. I no longer have my own place to reflect them back to you. Inspired by the news of the ill-fated Warsaw Ghetto Uprising in 1943, 20-year-old Hirsch Glick wrote what became the anthem of the Jewish partisan movement, Zog nid kemel, never say. If you all here and at home feel so inclined, I invite you to stand as I sing his words. It became tradition the world over to this day to rise to one's feet when singing his hopeful song. Hirsch perished a year later at 21 years of age, having escaped both the ghetto and the concentration camp where he was sent. He was never heard from again and presumed captured and killed. Never say that you're going your last way. Although the skies are filled with lead-covered blue days, our promised hour will soon come. Our marching steps ring out. We are here. Sorgen kemol as du gehst am letzten Weg, trotz den kleinen verstellen Leute, kommen wird noch unser ausgewählte Show. Es wird der Projekt und unser Trott mir sein Go. Kommen wird noch unser ausgewählte Show. Es wird der Projekt und unser Trott mir sein Go. Von grünen Palmenland bis weißen Land von Schnee. Wir kommen an mit unser Pein, mit unser Weh. Und wo gefallen ist der Spritz von unser Blut. Sprotzen wird dort unser Bruder, unser Mut. Und wo gefallen ist der Spritz von unser Blut. Sprotzen wird dort unser Bruder, unser Mut. Es wird die Morgensonne begilden uns den Feind. Der Nächten wird's verschwinden mit dem Feind. Noch euch versammeln wird die Sonne dem Kajor. Wie ein Parau, so ging das Lied von Dorf zu Dorf. Noch euch versammeln wird der Duft in dem Kajor. Wie ein Parau, so ging das Lied von Dorf zu Dorf. Das Lied geschrieben ist mit Blut und nicht mit Blei. Sie ist kein Wedel von der Freude läuft der frei. Das hat der Volk verwischen, fallen die Gewänd. Das Lied gesungen mit der Gans in die Hand. Das hat der Volk verwischen, fallen die Gewänd. Das Lied gesungen mit der Gans in die Hand. Das soll kein Mal, als du gehst am letzten Weg.
Quatschkimen bleiben, verstellen Leute. Kommen wird noch unser Hausgebänk schon. Sette Projekt und unser Trottel sein da. Kommen wird noch unser Hausgebänk schon. Sette Projekt und unser Trottel wir sein da. My own entry point into the Yiddish canon was heavily influenced by the convergence of the Yiddish language and the American songbook. In the second half of this talk, I will treat you to the incredibly vast interplay between Yiddish and popular music throughout the 20th century. I found this recording after sneaking into Harvard University archive, posing as a graduate student, as I had heard of its existence, that there was a Yiddish song that had been sung at the White House for President Calvin Coolidge by the Wunderkind Seymour Rechtside as he appealed to a congressional committee to let his mother and sisters emigrate despite the quota on Jewish emigres. I will attempt to sing with Seymour, the technology may not work, after him and his lifelong romantic and creative partner Miriam Cresson discuss his incredible success and luck in his newfound country.
You know, I must say, Miriam, my memories of Ellis Island are not as vivid in my mind. I came when I was perhaps younger. What I do remember is when we finally had enough money from my concert tour to bring my mother and the rest of the family and children to America, the quota, that infamous word, was closed.
By then, of course, you were famous enough to bring somebody to bring you to the White House, where you're pleased to admit your mother and the sisters was heard and it was answered. Yes, as the saying goes, die has git gedavnt, mein Mann, die has git gesingen.
Bringt mir, my Mama, fin jener Zeit. O liebe Menschen, hat Rachmanes auf mir. Hat's für ein Kind auf seine Mama schreit. O liebe Mama, 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 ich wart auf dir. Ah, jede Nacht, o liebe Mama, noch von dir allein ich klär. Verwusst mir, lass dich nicht rein in ein Land zu mir her. Oi, bringt mir mein Mama, oi, bringt mir Liebe.
Between 1890 and 1940, as many as a dozen Yiddish theater companies performed on the Lower East Side, the Bronx and Brooklyn. Another 200 or so traveled to other cities and towns. The Hebrew Actors Union, who I got to sing for many, many years ago, but they're now closed, but they were the first actors union in America established in 1899. Before American Actors Equity. By presenting plays on themes such as generational conflict between old country immigrants and their American-born children, or the tensions between Hasidic and enlightened Jews in Europe and America, the theater helped Yiddish-speaking immigrants metabolize the inherent contradictions in their communities and their lives.
the roots of this intensely creative era, which had about 2 million patrons a year on the Lower East Side, were planted in around 1876, when Abraham Goldfaden wrote and presented the first productions in Iași, Romania. Having himself been a badchin for many years, he now set out to create a type of Jewish opera or operetta, when he interwove music from synagogue chants, religious hymns, holiday songs, Hasidic tunes, Yiddish folk songs, Slavic melodies, and European grand operas. Many plays, films, and compositions were linked to the old country and the new. In fact, some of the only remaining footage of pre-war Warsaw, for instance, are found in films such as Mamele, which featured a New York-born actor, Molly P. Kahn, who traveled in 1938 with the American production team to Poland just 1 year before the invasion by the Nazis to make this movie. Songs such as this one, Belts, composed for the play Das Lied von der Ghetto, Song of the Ghetto, on the Lower East Side, spoke of the longing for one's previous village or city. Written by two of the greats in the Yiddish theater, Jacob Jacobs, the writer previously mentioned by Meir Sushain and Alexander Olshanetsky, it was published in New York in 1933, and by 1935, it appeared in Poland in Polish language sheet music. Tell me, old one, tell me quickly, as I need to know straight away, what does my town look like that was once shining? The town is old. The rooftops are caved in. The windows are without glass. You would no longer recognize it. Oh, Belts, my hometown of Belts, where I spent my childhood years. Erzähl mir Eltern, erzähl mir geschwind, weil ich will wissen, alles erzählen. Wie seht euch das Schweden, was hat am Morgen glanz, sie blieb noch das Bämmerle, was ich hab verfranst. Das Stiebel ist alt, verwachsen mit Mochengroß, der alte Dach zerfällt, der Fenster und los, der Garnek ist krumm, sie beugen die Wand, du weißt das schon mehr, gar nicht erkennt. Der Garnek ist krumm, sie beugen die Wand, du weißt das schon mehr, gar nicht erkennt. Hear the words, sing with me. Mein steht in der Bells, mein Himmel, wo ich hab meine kindische Jahr verbracht. Seit ihr am Morgen werden Bells, mein steht in der Bells, in eurem Stiebele mit alle Kinder lachen. The Yiddish stage and screen featured the most beautiful love ballads. One could fill a whole concert with just lavishly written songs about romance. Trust me, I wanted to. The song, Tief wie die Nacht, As Dark as the Night, from the last Yiddish film made in Poland just before the invasion, entitled Abrivle del Mament, and inspired by the song I previously sang to you from 1907, features Jack Weinstein's Yiddish lyrics that were based on a Soviet song, Dark as the Night, by Nikita Begalovsky. When the night comes, and I remain all alone, everything is quiet, save my heart, which longs for a tune. Deep as the night is my love for you, my beloved. ist still, nur mein Herz, was bringt und erschien. Dann zieht mich zu dir, Geliebte, komm zu mir. Wie die Nacht in ihr Pracht, was der Mord mich tief wie die Nacht ist mein Liebe zu dir, geliebte Mann, zu sagen dir, das Salz, was ich vergesse, jetzt sitzt und tragt sie das Glück, wird mit uns ewig sein, verliehen. Hat mein Leben gar kein Wert. Written for the operetta Was Mädelech tun, What Girls Do by the Jacob Olshanetsky duo, this composition, first performed by Seymour Rechtzeit, would give you a taste of what a piece of dance music would have sounded like. Let's now all dance a hopkele, a happy hopkele. Let's hop, 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 hop. You'll love me alle, ich will tanzen neuer hopkele, a freilich hopkele. You'll love me hop, hop. Das ganze Leben ist doch noch a hopkele. You'll love me alle, tanzen alle lange Lied. Geht, oi, oi, es geht, verwechselt in dem gleichen Rhythm, oi, oi, geht, oi, oi, es geht. Wochen und Mädel tanzt den Tanz, no mehr alle ist der Tanz ein neuer Hopkele, a freilich Hopkele, no mehr Hop, 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 das ganze Leben ist doch noch ein Hopkele, no mehr alle tanzen das Hopkele. Hopketale, 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 The convergence of Yiddish and Jewish culture with American songwriting played a significant role throughout the 20th century, and this example from 1945 is a particular convention of taking an existing song and giving it a Jewish twist, renaming it from the syncopated clock, Leroy Anderson's song, to the shikker ticker. Shikker in Yiddish means to be inebriated. After discovering the unique properties of his cuckoo clock when he gets the chickadee drunk, Avram Yitzchak cashes in. And in the last line, und jetzt pfeift auf der ganze Welt, and now he is whistling around the whole world, we have the familiar trope of coming through adversity and surviving it through a melody. This is my O Canada instrument, just in case. It's actually from David's Tea, for those of you who can actually go shop at David's Tea. Okay, sorry. There was a man, Avrom Yitzchak, who had a geschäft in Gebelje Bialystok. He loved his schnapps like a good Litvak, but the latest craze was a shaker cock. Now Avrom Yitzchak, once last year, hat Schnaps gemischt mit a bottle full of beer. Was hat passiert to his career? Made Avrom Schreises a good to him. For Yitzhak Sheker, as he was, went to work in the shop to oil the wheels of the clocks he fixed. Avram used a bissel schnapps. The clock zermischt ran double quick. The cuckoo sang like a kachka that was sick. Instead of tick-tock, tick-tock-tick, the Sheker ticker could only hick tick-a-tock. Oi, Avram hat geschwitzt wie a Pferd, tick-a-tock, tick-a-tock. His Geschäft wird es liegen in der Helm. Now Avram Yitzchak, smart Litvak, recovered from the unexpected shock. His landslide from Bialystok came to hear the chick o'clock. The news spread quickly through the Welt, and La Jeunesse paid lots of geld. Warum jetzt kaputt und gequält in uns pfeift der ganze Welt. One of the great theater performers, Aaron Lebedev, born in Gomel, Belarus, the same city my father's ancestors left from at the turn of the last century, was an irreverent, bombastic, and charismatic performer, eventually making his way through Siberia, Manchuria, China, and Japan. He landed in New York City and his talents were immediately recognized. And for 16 years straight, he played on 2nd Avenue on the Lower East Side. And his trademark song, Romania, pokes fun at the superlative singing of cantors in the synagogue, and remembers the joys and excesses of Romanian life. Oh, Romania, you were sweet and beautiful. To live there was a joy. In Romania, one drinks wine and eats mama ligale. If one kisses one's own wife, one is a mashiach. Romania, 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 gewinnen wir ein Land, das ist Ashkenaz. Romania, 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 gewinnen wir ein Land, das ist Ashkenaz. Dort zu wohnen ist ein Vergnügen. Was das Herz lust dir, das kannst du kriegen. Am Namen liegele, Pastramle, a Kanatzle und a Gläser Wein. Meine Knicklein, die Bellmen, vorbei der Katze. Hat digidum, digidum, hat digidum, digidum, hat digidum, digidum, hat digidum, digidum. In Rumänien ist das gefunden, kein Sorge, weiß ich nicht. Bein zumindest mit seinem Bettman, vorbei der Katze. Hat digidum, digidum, hat digidum, digidum, hat digidum, digidum, hat digidum, digidum. Heute gab es der Maschine, die sind Mama liegen. Stell you wenn ich es kann, dazu lernen, sing mal, tadilidam, sing mal, tadilidam, sing mal, tadilidam, sing mal, tadilidam. Zusammen chai, das kann nicht sein. Euer Vergnügen ist doch rumänisch Wein. In Rumänien trinkt man Wein und essen Mama Liebe. Wer ist für sein eigen Wein, wenn es ist Maschige. Sing mal, tadilidam, sing mal, tadilidam, sing mal, tadilidam, sing mal, tadilidam. Zusammen chai, besser kann ich sein. Euer Vergnügen ist doch rumänisch Wein. One last time. Oh, ihr könnt doch den Menschen bei, es steht die an der Freie, angetronnen, nach der Strafe, es macht die Kugel, Satz, tadilidam, Satz, tadilidam, Satz, tadilidam, Satz, tadilidam. Zusammen chai, besser kann ich sein. Euer Vergnügen ist doch rumänisch Wein. So by this point, it is clear how profoundly the Yiddish artistic influence was on the American landscape, and the hunger that the Jewish community had to leave their American experience translated through familiar cultural lens. Miriam Cresson, the wife of the famous crooner Seymour Rechtzeit, wrote and translated hundreds of Yiddish songs for the radio in New York City. Together, they hosted a twice-weekly radio show for decades, well into the 1980s. This is the same show that you heard a clip from previously in the talk. To fund the radio programs, they did commercials in Yiddish, for instance, for Ajax. Ajax, der sommige cleanser, schwenkt darum dem Schmutz und Drein. Or they did one for Barbasol. Barbasol, Barbasol, ihr Daufkin, Brushkin, Zeif mit dem, shave sich allein. Barbasol, Barbasol, hi, Barbasol. And they were also commissioned to do a spoof of Love and Marriage for Instant Maxwell Coffee. Love and marriage, meint ihr mir zu Shem, a baby carriage, der Tate hat die Mamen, in Frieden leben sich zusammen. Jingle Mädel, behändigt sich mit Tag, duschen Ringel, wie Shabbos in der Abend, Instant Maxwell, was man darf mit kochen. Irving, Berlin, born Israel Balin, Richard Rogers, taken from Rogozinski, George Gershwin from Gershwitz. Not only was the American songbook inextricably tied to Jewish cultural influences, but these songs were translated back into Yiddish in real time. As the forthcoming medley will attest, nothing was off limits. Join me as we get into the denouement of this program as I give you a whirlwind tour of every aspect of American popular culture brought to a Yiddish-speaking public. There's no business like show business, like no business I know. Everything about it is appealing, everything the traffic will allow. Nowhere can you get that happy feeling when you are stealing that extra bow. Weil mir machen die Welt lachen, hat Geld machen nicht. Heute ist das Theater ledig, es ist vermacht. Morgen tanzt man dort in Lacht. Man neigt in man Patsche bis eine halbe Nacht. Und das stellt sich ein vor. This next one was translated for the Harry Harris Jewish Hour, which is out of Hamilton, about an hour from where I was born. And it's also a song that I sung to my now older child for many years. And it sounds lovely in Yiddish. I'm not on my knees anymore. You are almost 3, sonny boy. There's no way of knowing, I've no way of showing what you mean to me, sonny boy. Wenn der Himmel es mich verstellt, finster vor mir die Welt, dann machst du als richtig Sindelel. Wenn ich will alt und treu sein, sagst du Kind, du wirst mir treu sein, weil du bist mein Fleisch und Blut, Sonny boy. And so I mentioned nothing was off limits, and we'll see if you can recognize this song that was translated into Yiddish from a Broadway musical. Chip in Katschkes läuft mein Harry, wenn ich nehm dich reich in mein Sari. Es ist a Britsch geschehen, keinen Haare mit a Fringe, Tag. Der Fringe fresse in sie Mädchen, denn ich treibe ihr meine schöne Verlech. Mekane ist man mich mit die Verlech gesehen. Ach, hab die Rede Gele, der Sitz ist Bäum, wie Samendost helpe glätter. Fensteröffnen glosen, neu benommen, weil Tomer beizet der Wetter. Zwei schöne Lämplech, wo's winken und blinken, von die Podkovers fliegen die Finken. Man kann sich von der Luft nicht trinken, was es gibt. Ach, ab mit meinen schönen kleinen Felden mit Flint auf dem Tag. Anyone recognize the musical? It's from Oklahoma. Someone wrote it before the Odyssey. Oi, sag a schöner Frühmorgen, es wird noch der Todheim sein schön. Warf alle Fenster die Sorgen, mein Mädele kommt heim zu gehen. Mein Mädele kommt heim zu gehen. Halleluja, unser Himmlein, was ist frei, singt für Mamme, ihre Kinder seien treu. Singt Halleluja, gibt zu Gott das Schlaf von dem, war unser Leben. Singt Halleluja, gibt zu Gott das Schlaf von dem. Singt, das Leben soll ewig unser Teil Liebe. Sing hallelujah, everybody, sing hallelujah, sing hallelujah, unser teure Liebe. Now, please, those of you that have paper, all of you Yiddish-speaking public, I think you have a song with you. And at home, I shared my screen so you can sing with me. The melody is very foreign to you, I'm sure. I'll sing it once and then we sing it together. And please stumble along. Wenn jing, was ist alt, Welt verliebt, fühlt bald, es ist zu Herz. Wenn macht auf euch, seht bald, es ist teug, euch kaputt. Wenn freut, seht boy, es ist nicht so, dann ist zu Herz. Los ihm neben stehen, weil sie kann, bald der Sehner ist verliebt. Bald noch ein Jahr, und weiß, was noch, was Jahr ist. Ist doch fair in your bed, ist auf Größe gebrutene Zudes. Let me hear you now. Wenn jing, was ist wird verfilter, als es zu. Wenn öffnen, seht als es euch kaputt. So to speak Yiddish. Wenn seht etwas ist nicht, das, dann ist zu. Los ihm neben stehen, weil sie können, weil der Sehner ist wahr. High note. Valtayo, Chayo, weiß noch was Chayo ist. Says doch fair in your bed, says auf Größe gebrotene Zudes. Thank you all at home for singing with me. You might recognize this from Pulp Fiction. Es ihn verbrennt. Hab ich amul am Mädele dort gekannt. Miselo heisi, jeder dort weiß sie gibt. Ich kenn die Prinzessin mehr schon vergessen nie. Still
ob im Kiel. Und ich fühl, als ich will, mein Gefühl. Fahr ihr Reiskissen und sie so wissen, ja. Komm, hey, mein Bänkschaft, no, du kennst helfen mir. Zu mehr Zeit, das Leben, Gan Eden. Katsch geschwimmen und a reute Sonn vergeht. Da Tante ist rein, aber dein Mame a Krasavitze. Oi, schlaf, mein Tanke, schlaf, heim. Das ist das Lied von deiner Liebe. Gott ist kein Liebe, kein Urgewinn. Ich hör das Lied in aller Stille. Dich allein kann ich nicht sehen. Avec bist du in mit dir das Glied. In ein anderer ist heim mit dir. Von mir ist doch ewig verloren. Noch in Sachen geblieben.
Seymour Repzai, who was one of my inspirations of Yiddish American music, he became known as the Yiddish Frank Sinatra. So of course, his wife translated this.
Geht sucht jeden Morgen, ich mach sich in wir sein a Teil von der Stadt New York, New York. Kickt und meine Ski, so gnädig ist sie. Viel jetzt dem Glust, dem Wanderlust, New York, New York. Wort werden aufstehen in der Stadt, wo schluft kein Lied. Und vielen sicher so geht, sicher so geht. Ich fühl sich, ich fühl sich, ich fühl so geht. Mein Klee steht so dick, Schreck ist verschwindender Neck. Und koi mich gewellig fort das nahe, dort in New York, kein Berg, dort a Held. Jetzt hab ich ganze Welt als in mein Städtele. New It's like show business, Hutchman Sox ist nicht ai. Jeder guckt sich das schlechte Zeiten, als Theater ist ein Invalid. No, ich will mein Professor nicht verbeiten, ich will Chitzli, ich bin ein Lied, mach lachen, die Welt lachen, hat Geld machen wir nicht. Heute ist das Theater ledig, es ist vermacht. Morgen tanzt man dort in der Nacht. Man neigt und man patschet bis Abendnacht. Und das, stell sich euch vor, ist das Leben von einer Nacht, ja. The Yiddish-speaking audiences dwindled throughout the 20th century, and the landscape featured mainly pockets of Orthodox Jews in large urban centers such as New York, Jerusalem, and Toronto, who use Yiddish as their everyday vernacular in contrast to Hebrew as their language of scholarship and prayer. These communities are generally not involved in preserving Yiddish language and culture consciously, but rather letting the language evolve and mix with their new linguistic and cultural landscapes. Furthermore, popular culture tends not to be a major factor in more closed, observant communities. The Yiddish revival, on the other hand, features artists, scholars, and those who have a niche interest in preserving the Yiddish cultural landscape. There have been major TV productions in the last few years featuring a lot of Yiddish in them, including Unorthodox, which you may have seen, and Shtisel on Netflix, which are very popular, and there's a vast range of musical ensembles and theatrical productions and scholarly endeavors that span the world over. The National Yiddish Theater Volksbühne in New York has been and continues to produce theatrical productions. I've collaborated with them over a number of years, and they develop new scripts and they do outreach to the world, and they have been in existence for over a century. Hundreds of artists continue to break new ground. There have been Grammy wins and nominations for Yiddish music in recent years, and iconic performers such as American actor Mandy Patinkin, who I got to sing with many years ago, have brought many Yiddish songs to life. To close, I'd like to share a couple of songs that have become staples for me in my own journey to communicate melodies infused with hope, life, and our collective dream.
When all the world is a hopeless jumble, and the raindrops tumble all around, heaven opens a magic way. When all the stars open up the skyway, there's a rainbow highway to be found, leading from your window pane to a place behind the sun, to a place beyond the rain. Regenbogen euch unweit liegt an Gan Eden schon von der Zeit. Somewhere over the rainbow skies are blue, that you dare to dream really do come true. Am Morgen, wenn euch haben sich und alle Wolken werden verschwunden werden und alle
meine Suches werden fliehen von mir weiter weg und werden nie trennen. Somewhere over the bluebirds fly, birds fly over the rainbow. Why? Someday I'll wish upon a star, wake up when the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away across the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. Birds fly over the rainbow. Why can't I? Euch Vögel fliehen heuchelwein, Favos kenn ich nicht. I want to thank Jerry Abdo for being here and being such an amazing musician and taking so much time. I want to thank the cantor and rabbi for letting me into your beautiful home here. And Uval, the chazan, has spent many hours being here with us and has been so generous. And I want to thank Queen's University for this opportunity, for giving me a chance to really revisit repertoire and songs that I hadn't even remembered that I had sung before. And it was lovely to have you all come and you listen. And we'll end with one song, which I think you can all sing with us. So thank you again. Once upon a time, there was a tavern where we used to raise a glass. Remember how we laughed away the hours and thought of all the great things we would do. Those were the days, my friends. We thought they'd never end. We'd sing and dance forever and a day. We'd live the life we choose. We'd fight and never lose. Those were the days. Oh yes, those were the days. Yai-da-i-yai-da-dum. Yai-da-i-da-i-da-dum. Yai-da-da-dum. Yai-da-i-da-i-da-dum. Yai-da-i-da-i-da-dum. Yai-da-da-i-da-dum. Yai-da-da-i-da-i-da-dum. Das Leben geht nicht immer wie gewünscht. Wir haben sich zerheit auf Jahren lang. Nachdem, wenn wir haben sich getroffen, der Mond in jener Zeiten mit sang. Gewinner Zeit, mein Freund, ei wie es bängt sich Hand. Wir pflegen Hulien, lachen ganze Nacht, dann haben Fisch gesprungen und das Herz gesungen. Neue Zeit, mein Freund, gewinner Zeit. Ja, da, ja, ja, Through the door there came familiar laughter. I heard your voice and I heard you call my name.
Oh, my friends were older, but no wiser. For in our hearts, the dreams are still the same. Those were the days, my friends, we thought they'd never end. We'd sing and dance forever and a day. We'd live the life we choose. We'd fight and never lose. Those were the days. Oh yes, those were the days. We live the life we choose. We fight and never lose. Those were the days. Oh, yes, those were the days. Thank you all. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Well, I hope everyone enjoyed that as much as I did. Thank you, Mitch. That was amazing. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. And depending what time it is there, maybe it's night. I don't know. But anyway, thank you, Mitch. That was absolutely incredible. I really appreciate it. And we all do.
Thank you. Thank you, Dustin.
Thank you, Mitch and Jerry. It was great. And thank the rabbi and the chazan for allowing us to have this really memorable concert. It was so wonderful. We haven't had a program for 2 years, and this was just the way to fill in not 1 year, but 2 years. Great. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you very much. See you in the fall.
Yes. So long.
Bye.